Hi, we're going to look at an activity with patterns and writing expressions for patterns. So you have this in your packet. Let's look at this first page, and you will have these figures. And then we are going to go through this process of what do you notice? And then what would the next figure look at like, and then project out to the 10th figure, and then see if we find a pattern so we can write a rule. So we're going to go over this step by step. Let's just start right now with you can pause this video and just write down something you notice. So whatever you wrote is probably fine, right? Whatever you notice or wonder. I noticed that, and even though it's hidden, that there are two squares here, like one row of two squares, and then two rows of two squares, and three rows of two squares, and then four rows of two squares. So that means I think, what will I think the fifth one would look like? And then you can either draw it or explain it. I drew it. I think it's going to look, well, it's kind of like this. So I drew 5 rows of 2 squares. And I figured that out because each consecutive figure has 2 more squares on top than the one before it. Okay, so now that I know that, I'm thinking, what would the 10th figure look like? So you can either draw it or describe it. So pause the video now and try that. So I'm just going to describe it. I think that there is going to be 10 rows of 2. I think it's just going to look just like this rectangle, except rather than being 4 rows, there'll be 10 rows, because it seems like whatever the figure number is down here is the same as the number of rows that are stacked on top of each other. So that's my prediction. And that seems to make sense, right? So how would I describe this pattern? So we're going to now just kind of describe the pattern in words. And there's lots of ways of describing it. I said figure 1 has 2 squares, and then figure 2 has 4 squares, and figure 10 has 20 squares. So I'm going to use that if I'm to find the total number of squares in the pattern. Maybe you hadn't considered that, but the total number of squares, I'm going to use that to make a rule. So if I let the thing I don't know, what keeps changing? The figure number keeps changing, and that's causing the number of squares to change. So I'm going to let the figure number, I'm going to use the letter N for figure number. I'm saying, well, to find the total number of squares, no matter how many I have, I would just multiply the figure by 2. So if I use the letter N to represent the figure number, then I would write 2N as the rule. So 2 times the figure number. Let's try that in a more difficult one. So this is the third picture you have. And so you can you could pause the video and write something you notice. And now you can make a prediction about what the fifth one would look like. Because here's the third one. And if you would kind of imagine what it would look like, you can explain it in words. And then the 10th one. Okay. So for me, what I'm noticing is that there's a center square in the middle, and then 4 squares are added on the end. And then you take this picture here, and that's the blue on the inside, and 4 more are added. And then that's the next one, the blue is figure 2, and then 4 more are added for figure 3. So there'll be 4 more added for figure 4, and 4 more added for figure 5, and there'll be 4 more added each figure. So the way I describe it is that figure 1 has 1 square to start with, and then 4 red squares added to it. Then figure 2 is 4 more squares added than before. And then figure 3 is 4 more added. So I wrote it like this. I started with 1 and added 4. That's figure 1. Then for figure 2, so 1 plus 4, that's figure 1. And then I'm adding 4 more for figure 2. That's 2 4s. So, and then I'm adding 4 more. So this is what figure 2 looks like, right? 1 plus 4. That's figure 2. I'm adding 4 more. So now I'm adding 3 4s. So then for figure 4, I'd be adding 4 4s. And figure 5 would be adding 5 4s, and then 10 4s. And so my rule is this. If N is the figure number, okay, then my expression is I start with 1, and then I add 4 more for every figure number. So 4 times the figure number. So in other words, for like the 10th figure, there would be 41 total squares. So go ahead and try the other one that's on your packet, the one with the hexagons.